Hey everybody, welcome to episode 5 of Cougar Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with my co-host Ryan Root, here to talk about all things WSU and Cougar football. And the first thing I want to talk about is if you're listening to this consistently, it might sound like a repeat. I promise you this is a new episode, but we're talking about players transferring again. So Ryan, I'm going to just toss it straight to you. Are we going to see more players leaving? I know a month ago we talked about this. Well, we're back at it again. Are more players going to leave this program?
Well, Cody, I'm gonna hit you with a quick detour real quick.
Go
I
for it.
can't let this
I'm all
show
for
slide
it.
without it, but you gotta love that Minshew magic, man. You gotta love that
Absolutely.
Minshew
Absolutely.
magic. 6 touchdowns, 2 weeks. He's cooking up, man. Got to give him. I had to give him a shout out real quick.
Of
But
course. Of
are more
course.
players going to transfer? I think this is the cutoff. I think we're good. I think we're in the clear. I hate to use the term trim the fat, but I think the fat's been trimmed. I think all of the players who wanted to play in a guaranteed season over an ACC or the SEC, I think all that's happened. I think, I mean, Drew Bledsoe's kid, he left because he didn't want to spend the rest of his college football season or his college football career on the bench. I
Hmm.
get it. Cassidy Woods is on the transfer portal after the Rolovich Player Association COVID, situation that happened over the phone. It it cuts off here. I think we have what we have, and we're going on.
Yeah. I I kind of agree, I would say. I think the reason why we're seeing this all at once, obviously, is because of this weird season. And, anytime a new coach comes in, players transfer. It's just how it goes. Like systems change, spots are lost or whatever, and since there wasn't a real like spring practice, people haven't figured that out until now. So I think, a couple of these guys would have transferred in April once they figured out, hey, my spot's gone, but they didn't have the opportunity. So it's all kind of happening now. But I don't think this is necessarily the end of it just because there's going to be real practices starting soon. Somebody's going to lose their spot. And with this year where you don't lose eligibility based on, if you play or not, this is a perfect year to transfer because it's a free year. If you miss it, you're not losing a year of playing football. So I think we're going to see more players enter it just based on that, when practice starts. And I think the big thing is going to be if the Pac-12 doesn't play football this year, or the votes obviously still coming up, but if they don't play, then this is going to be huge. People are definitely going to leave.
Well, that's the ticket. That's really just the whole, X factor in this whole situation. Depending on that decision on Thursday from the Pac-12, we're either going to see more Cougars transfer or not. But considering that all things are pointing towards that possibly happening, I think that we're kind of leaning on a 60-40
Hmm.
situation with having a season. And with us having a season, that takes away their number one reason for leaving Pullman is I want to play. Number two reason for leaving Pullman is probably the surrounding community. I mean, we're a small town, I get it, but
Yeah, and if
now
you,
that
if you
we
don't want COVID, you should probably leave here now.
exactly, and as Pullman's kind of dealing with that situation and the fact that we may have a season, again I'm leaning towards us having a season. It
Hmm.
it all just points to us keeping the players that we have and making sure we let bygones be bygones with those players that had left, especially with Bledsoe's son. I think it's just something that I think we all need to just kind of put to the side. We have our new quarterbacks that came in, transfers and recruits. We got a quarterback competition, and nobody was putting Bledsoe on the list for the quarterback position. You know,
Hmm.
I think the cutoff has happened. The biggest reason to leave was to have a season, and everything's pointing towards us having a season, I think.
Yeah, and these next, whatever few months, month and a half is going to be absolutely huge for Nick Rolovich because right now, if you're looking at this program, it looks like there's a problem with 7 players in the transfer portal. That looks really bad on this program and possibly on this new head coach. Looking through the other schools, none of them really had more than two, and a lot of them were cases, of a good player leaving a team that's been struggling in the Pac-12. I can understand that. I get a guy at Cal wanting to go spend his senior year on a competitive team, but WSU, isn't really in that situation. They were, not so great last year, but this team has a higher ceiling than, the Cals and the Oregon States. And, there's a few players looking at this that I think are really important. So 7 players, like we mentioned, Tay Martin's obviously gone. He's at Oklahoma State. There was a lot more reasons than just football for that. Skylar Thomas entered the transfer portal and then came back. So that is still an opportunity or a possibility for all of these players. Like Nick Rolovich can go out and get these guys back if the season does happen. But the big names I'm looking at, Roderick Fisher was a guy who was just kind of left the team in the winter for a lot of other reasons, but really Rolovich hasn't had his time with him. And if he can get him back, I mean, this was a 4-star recruit. This was a big player. And at the outside wide receiver position where they don't have a lot of talent right now, he could be huge. um, Mike Petway was a freshman, didn't play last year, and he's leaving. That could be, for system reasons or others. But I think if he's able to go out and secure some of these players that are trying to leave and bring them back, then I think that, makes it clear that this isn't a problem, that, there's so many crazy circumstances, there's things going on. But if he doesn't, and if another player or two leaves, then I think this is going to be a really bad mark on this program because that just doesn't look really good.
Well, I understand that it looks like a bad mark on the program, considering, we have a new coaching staff coming in. We have basically our best players last year that had left with, the offense and the defensive side of the ball. Like, I understand that it looks like a bad mark, but I want to go back to Skylar Thomas because he came back to, be that veteran secondary defensive player that we so desperately need.
Hmm.
And there's two ends of this equation. There's something that's bringing people back, and there's something that's keeping people here. And I think what's keeping people here is we lose people like Tay Martin, who was probably our number one veteran receiver going into the season. And then you have players like Travell Harris, Calvin Jackson Jr., Bernard Bell. They all get to move up a step. They all get to move up a rung in the social ladder of the receiver position. Everyone is getting a bump up at this point. Why would you want to leave if you're going to have a bigger role going into the next season? I bet you some defensive players did not think that they were going to have, a starting job or a role on this team, whether it's on the defensive side of the ball or special teams. But they all get to move up a rung. They all get to move up in the lineup after losing some veterans. And then there's some veterans who came back so they can help those newcomers get accustomed to the new team.
Yeah, but the thing about that is that's not the case for everybody. There's a new coach, a new defensive system. So some players maybe got bumped down a couple rungs. Some guy who's playing defensive end might be asked to play outside linebacker. Somebody who's playing or defensive tackle, move from corner to safety, and they just don't want to do that. So those things happen when there's a new coach. There's a reason why there are, a handful of transfers when a new coach comes in. And I just think since we haven't got to the actual on field, like real life padded practices yet, I think it's gonna mean that more players are gonna figure out where they fit in and realize, oh, I'm not gonna start, I'm not gonna play. The guy ahead of me is a year younger than me. Like I don't have a future here. And quarterback is one of those positions too. I know you kind of mentioned that quarterback battle, but it's hard to believe that if three guys go into a quarterback battle, one guy's going to be the starter, and at least one of the other guys doesn't want to transfer, especially if a younger guy wins it. So I would not be surprised if somebody else enters his transfer portal, whether it's in the next couple of weeks or during the season. But I just think that's going to happen based on I mean, the precedent's there. A bunch of players are entering. So I think that these guys have it in their mind because they're seeing it. And if something goes wrong or not the way they want, this is a free year. They can take that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, uh, considering we have 7 up right now, I can see how there could be more, but I think we're good. I think the roster is I think we have what we got, and we're moving forward, whether you like it or not. That's my poem of the day. There you go.
Well, I like it. I know we've lost some guys, but the core of this team is still there. Obviously, Skylar Thompson coming back was big, and we hit on it briefly. But speaking, just like Skylar Thomas, it looks like the Pac-12 football is going to come back. Obviously, awaiting the official CEO vote on Thursday, but it looks like a Pac-12 football season will be happening in 2020. Hallelujah. But Ryan, what is that going to look like? Because it's not going to look normal. What are we going to see?
I think we're gonna definitely expect, obviously, a shortened season. I'll say that first and foremost. We're probably looking at maybe like an 8-game season if we start in the late October. I believe the final voting starts December 20th, correct?
It's 20th, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be college football playoff eligible, which that's going to be relevant for only a few teams in the Pac-12 because we're
Maybe.
already snubbed as it is as a Power Five conference. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're still going to be college football playoff, I think, but we're probably going to be looking at an 8-week season, which is better than a 0-week season. I'll say that much. Um,
Absolutely.
but it's going to be 8 weeks, not 10 as I would have really liked it. But you only have to win 4 games to be bowl eligible. It's there's some pros and cons to an 8-week season, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And going off what you said, so October 31st, Halloween is when it is the most common kind of floated around date for this Pac-12 return. I think Big Ten's returning a week before that, so Pac-12 deciding is probably going to go for that. And so if that is the date you're looking at, December 20th is the final college football playoff ranking. Obviously, there might be a Pac-12 team that needs it, but they're going to aim best case scenario to get it done before then. So if a team is good, they can make it in. So that gives 8 weeks to play before that ranking, and that's including a Pac-12 championship week. So 7 games. But one of the things that Big Ten did, they have this model where in the championship week, so you're going to have the two number one teams in each division play each other. I don't remember what those divisions are called, but for the Pac-12, it'd be North and South. But then they're also going to go down the line. They're going to have the number two teams play each other, the number three, and down to six, so that teams get more games. In their case, it's 9. So that I think the Pac-12 needs to do that, because if they don't do that, then you're looking at 7. And I don't know. I think it's going to be hard to get that, like, really that recognition if you're playing 7, especially when you're going to have teams playing 10, 11 games. So I think that's going to be super important to get those 8 games in, and that way you can get to 4 wins, you can be 500, and you can make a bowl game. So I'm curious what your thoughts are about that.
I think it's interesting. I mean, again, I'll say it. It's better than a 0-week season. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
any viewers that we have on the show, feel free to drop your own predictions in the chat of what you think it's going to look like. Whether you agree, disagree, we always love any open chat going on. But I'll ask you this, Cody. Like, I love that football has such a good chance of coming back this Thursday, if that decision's made. But
Yeah.
do you really think that fall was the best time to do it? Because I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping for a spring season, and
it,
like I'll give you a reason real quick. Like,
Go for it.
I understand that fall is a time for football, and there's not very much football being played in the spring other than the AFL, but we forget about them. But spring season honestly is a green light in my eyes, and I do want to give a shout out to one of our fellow Dash Sports hosts over in Bear Dash, Jasper, who had a great tweet this week saying that the Pac-12 should have their season in the spring, and reason being is it's the only football going on. Which, if you only have one product out on the shelf, everyone's going to go towards that product. Everyone's going to look at Pac-12 football at that time. Already being a Power 5 conference that is snubbed in almost every single category, like, it's at be the sole conference playing football in the spring, I think would boost viewership tremendously. I mean, I'd actually get to watch First Take, and they might talk about a Pac-12 game. Like, I think a spring season would give us that opportunity. What do you think?
I'm glad you brought this up, because I absolutely hate this, and I hate that
Oh, okay.
take. I'm not trying to be personal, because this isn't just yours. Because I just find a lot of holes to poke in it. First off, being that Pac-12 football isn't like the greatest product, especially if you're talking about playing it in the spring, where a bunch of players, every draft eligible player, is going to opt out because they're going to the NFL. And the whole idea of, oh, get a product on the field, people are going to watch it. That doesn't work if the product isn't at the quality that people want. The AAF failed playing in the spring, and that was a product on TV that people just
So
didn't
you're saying
watch.
Pac-12 football is on par with back alley football league in the AAF. That's what you're saying.
Well, I'm saying that if Oregon State is playing Cal, then I think I would rather watch the AAF. The Pac-12 has not a lot
That's
of
saying something,
national.
Cody. That's honestly saying so. The fact that you'll put a Division 1 school, a
Yeah,
Division 1 matchup below what who even are players in the AF? Like
they're
we all knew who Justin Herbert was nationally. Did you know who the starting quarterback was for the Seattle Dragons? Because I
uh,
don't.
a lot of those guys were fringe NFL players. Like if you're talking, and you watch those guys, and some of them are playing in the NFL now. Like they've gotten spots. So it was a
So
competitive league. It
you
was,
gotta change your verb there. You're saying playing. Okay, they're on the team.
yeah,
They're not touching the field, Cody.
they
Okay.
would have in they would have in preseason. I think it kind of ruined their
In
chance,
preseason. Okay. You're right. They
and they
would have
could
played
have.
the second half. The fourth
Yeah,
string
they
D
could.
tackle would have played. Yes, but they are not playing.
Well,
We have there's too much star power in the NFL for an AAF player to even be
hmm
in there. Now to say that Pac-12 is a step below that, where there's Pac-12 players drafted every year. A great amount of them play. I mean,
hmm
Zach Moss is playing for the Bills right now. Herbert just played with the Chargers yesterday. We're seeing them play. I'm not going to see an AAF NFL quarterback who may have thrown a pass in 2008. I don't want to watch that when I could watch some entertaining, 18 to 22-year-olds play football.
Yeah, absolutely. But you think that, but I don't think the rest of the country does. I don't think people in Florida
Well,
care
where's the
about tackle
AAF now?
football.
They don't exist.
Exactly.
They
And
had
the
to resort to
Pac-12,
Dwayne the Rock Johnson to get funding. Okay, the
that was
Pac-12
the
is
XFL.
the Pac-12 is a Power 5 conference with million. It's got
hmm
its own network, Cody. The AAF does
That
not
people
have a
don't
network.
watch.
The
People don't
AAF,
watch the Pac-12 network.
okay, well, Pac-12 fans do, and more people would watch it if it was in the spring. But the AAF, they had to rest on former NFL players to even be a
hmm
league. And
Yeah.
there were no RG3s or Baker Mayfield, or not Baker Mayfield. Sorry, I throw him and Johnny Manziel in the same pot because it's just kind of looking like that right now. But you're not looking at any of those people stealing the show. And you can score like 9 points on a drive in the AAF. In the Pac-12, you'll actually get to watch some decent football compared to the
Yeah, but
AAF.
the thing is, if the Pac-12 is playing in the spring, what's the point? What are they playing for? A Pac-12 championship that means nothing? All the bowl games are passed. The national
It gives you a
championship's
ticket to the
over.
Rose Bowl, doesn't it? It's a
Who are they
first.
playing? Who are they playing in the Rose Bowl if every other team's already played? What are they going to play themselves? Like Big Ten's already done.
It's one of
Who
the
are they
big
playing
bowl.
in the
I'm
Rose
saying
Bowl?
typically, if you win a Pac-12 title game, you got a one-way ticket to the Rose Bowl that you're
Yeah,
playing.
but the Rose Bowl happens on January 1st. If they're finishing the season in March, they're not going to the Rose Bowl. They're just playing
Yes,
exhibition games
yes,
at
there
that
wouldn't
point.
be a Rose Bowl if we had a spring season. But if it was in the fall, which it's looking like it may be in this situation, so if we're going to an 8-week fall season
Yeah.
in a Rose Bowl game, which probably won't even happen, but ideally a Pac-12 championship means quite a bit, Cody. And to tell
When it
Cougar
happens
fans
in the
that it does,
fall.
okay,
When
to
it
tell
happens in
Coug
the
fans
fall,
that a
not the spring.
Pac-12 championship game doesn't mean anything, you're basically you're basically shooting away every Cougar fan dream right now. We haven't had one in forever.
I'm
You,
saying a Pac-12 championship doesn't matter in the spring because it doesn't mean anything. You're playing. There's no point. You're not going to the Rose Bowl. If a team goes undefeated, okay, they get like the whole point to play football is to play for a national championship. It's not to play for, hey, we're and you really think that people are if the Pac-12 didn't play, there is no more Power 5. It's a Power 4. Like people are not going to view the Pac-12 as the same as these conferences that don't play. Like I think it would have been a terrible decision because people care about college football now. People are not going to care in the spring. People in the South are not going to watch Pac-12 college football in the spring. It's just not going to happen. People on the West Coast are, but nobody's buying the Pac-12 network so they can maybe get 2 good games a week between the handful of Pac-12 teams that are nationally competitive. Like, I mean, I wouldn't watch really any other conference other than the SEC, maybe the Big Ten if it was happening in the spring, because half of the games wouldn't be good. Like, they would be blowouts. The college football happens now, and you need to be a part of it when it's happening for you to be included. Like, it just would have been a terrible decision.
The fact that you're saying a conference championship doesn't matter if it is in the spring baffles me, considering the fact that a conference championship should mean everything in any time of the year. It's a championship, isn't it? You get a trophy, you get cemented into history. Do you think an NBA championship still means something even though we're still playing the playoffs in September and October? I think it still means something.
Well,
Just because just
if
because
it
they
was
only brought
just
some
the
teams
West,
back, an NBA championship doesn't mean anything. I'd say a
if it
conference championship in the Pac-12 means something,
if it
regardless
was
of when you
just
play.
if it was just the West playing right now, then no. But I just don't think. I mean, and plus you're going to look at. I mean, like all of Oregon's good players have already opted out. They're not returning for a spring season. They might return for a fall season. So then there's a huge asterisk by it by the fact that every player that had NFL draft hopes that season wouldn't even be playing. So I just think there would be a huge asterisk. There would not be that many viewers. The Pac-12 network is already just a terrible sports network to begin with. So it would have just been a bad idea.
We'd have more competition with less NFL talent. We'd see some more competition. You got everybody on the same page. It'd be like the old time Olympics where there's amateurs all across the board, and you don't have NBA players playing in the Olympics. Okay, it would influence more competition in the Pac-12, I think, with less NFL talent in there.
Yeah, and that would mean more people here watching it, but not a lot of people watching it across the country. And speaking of kind of talent and that competition of talent, I want to start looking at this WSU team, especially knowing that now it looks like a season's going to be happening. And so I want to ask you, who's your player that's primed to break out? Who's the guy who's going to take a huge step forward this year and really cement their name on this team?
As far as I would like to put it on the defensive side of the ball, I think there's a lot of weight that's thrown the wide receivers' way this season for WSU. I mean, we've mentioned it before. Tay Martin leaving. We lost Desmond Patman and Aesop Winston last year. We have a new offense. There's going to be a lot of pressure put on this wide receiving core, and the one player that's going to elevate that is Renard Bell. I think Renard Bell has been here for the past couple of years, slowly kind of creeping his way into being a breakout player on offense. His touchdowns have done nothing but increased over the past couple of years. Had 3 first year, 5, and then 6. And honestly, I'm projecting him to have 10 touchdowns this next season. You can quote me on it. I think he might reach double-digit touchdowns with this new Rolovich offense. And when a new head coach comes into a program, what's the first thing they're going to look at? Well, probably the existing staff that's there, considering that we had a staff blow up in the football department. Can't really do that. Now, Rolovich is coming into Pullman. He can't really look at the staff department. So what is he going to look at next? He's going to look at the players. He's going to look at the veterans who have been here. And what better veteran receiver to look at than the guy who's not only been behind great receivers like Desmond Patman, Kyle Sweet, even Tavares Martin Jr. back in the day. Like, the fact that there's a veteran receiver still on this team who plays that slot position that Rolovich has taken advantage of in previous seasons, everything is checked for him to have a breakout year.
Yeah, before I kind of mentioned my guy, I want to bring your guy down a little bit, and it's nothing personal to you or Renard. I love Renard Bell. He's one of my favorite players on that team, but I think one of the things you're forgetting is that Jameer Calvin might come back this year. Jameer Calvin plays that same slot position. He was out last year with a bad injury, and he might have been the most talented guy at the slot position. And so the outside receivers, there's a lot of receivers that are gone, but they're all outside receivers. The slot guys are all still around other than Brandon Arconato. So Renard Bell is going to be competing with Travell Harris.
Arconato blew everyone out of the water last year with his receiving.
Yeah,
and
but Renard Bell
put him in place.
Yeah, Renard Bell is going to be competing with Travell Harris, and he's going to be competing with Jameer Calvin for those spots. So, I think we could possibly even see a bit of a downtick in production for Renard just based on the fact that Jameer Calvin's coming back and there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed at that slot position. But the guy I want to mention is Travion Brown. Not the biggest name that, a lot of people know. Pac-12 fans probably definitely don't know who he is. Cougar fans hopefully do. But when you're looking at a breakout player, you can do this one of two ways. You can look at, the stats and the numbers and the guys who leave and the opportunity, or you can just pick a guy that you really like. And I went with the second one. I just love watching Travion Brown play football. And it's not to say that he doesn't have bad numbers and he doesn't play good on the field and he doesn't have opportunity, but I mean, he was a guy number 82 at linebacker, so he already stands out. and every time he was on the field, I swear he was right there, either making the tackle or right there. His numbers don't suggest it, but just 28 tackles, 15 solo, 2 for loss. But the way he plays football is just incredible. So if he does get to listen to this, if you hear this, Travion Brown, you are my favorite player on this team. You're going to have a
Whoa,
huge
whoa, whoa.
year this year.
Cody, if we're shooting
What?
for a follow on Twitter, then hold on. We got to do it at the end of every segment if we're going to
No,
shoot for a follow on
I
Twitter.
just wanted to let him know how much I like him as a player. I'm picking him as my breakout player because I just believe in his talent. The opportunity might not be there. Jahad Woods and Justice Rogers are both coming back. If they go with 2 linebackers again, he won't necessarily have a starting job. But if they go 3, he's that third linebacker. And I'm doing this breakout prediction just based on his talent and based on his potential, which I
Oh,
think
so
is
we're not going
absolutely
off.
huge.
So we're not going off of stats, is what you're saying. So we're not going
I'd
off of
say
stats.
I mean, like I said, he doesn't have the greatest stats, but he didn't have the opportunity last year. I'm just saying he passed the eye test better than almost anybody. He was just a freak athlete on the field. I mean, he's a linebacker that's playing nickel. They started him at nickel a handful of times when they played teams that run. So I think that speaks to the type of player that he can be. And I just think he's going to get a chance to get on the field this year. And when he does, he's going to just blow people away because he's that type of player. I think he's going to just rack up tackles and have a huge impact on the field.
Yeah. Lord knows we need some help on the defensive side. I'll give you that. Okay. And judging by what you've described of his ability, he seems like a great athlete, but it's just going to come down to the tackle department, which I mean, is he going to be a like lockdown tackler that we need? Because there's been a lot of, I like to call this term the Earl Thomas tackling method. Earl
Mm-hmm.
Thomas, big time safety. You know, Earl Thomas is all-time great safety, but when he would go and tackle people, he would just throw his body at them and rather than wrap them up. Can this guy wrap up? Because that's really what it comes down to at that linebacker position. Can you finish a tackle?
Yeah.
Athleticism can only get you so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, athleticism can get you to the tackle. Obviously, he's going to have to make it. But I don't know if I mentioned this, but he was a true freshman last year. So everything he did was his first big time action, thrown into the fire. So I think the fact that he'll have had that experience, whatever work he's gotten to do over this kind of weird offseason, I think will help. If he's learning from Jahad Woods, who is one of the best tacklers and best linebackers in the Pac-12, I think that's huge. And, I would rather have a guy who can get to the tackle and not necessarily make it as opposed to a guy who can make every tackle but doesn't get there in terms of growing. Because I think you can teach somebody how to tackle, but you can't teach somebody to be just a freak of nature and an athlete. So
No,
I don't want him to get to the tackle and miss every tackle, but I'm just saying that's the part you can teach. So I think he's going to be able to learn that, and he's going to be able to improve his tackling while keeping his same athleticism. And I think he's going to go. He's just going to be insane on that defensive side of the ball.
well, let me bring you back to Renard Bell real quick
Yeah.
because you went off of talent, I went off of stats. So I'll bring you back to Renard Bell. So first of all, Rolo had a great slot receiver in 2018 in Hawaii in
Mm-hmm.
John Ursaw, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Okay. John Ursaw and Renard Bell have very similar stat lines over the course of their career. John only played about 3 years and declared for the draft after this breakout year because he
Mm-hmm.
scored 16 receiving touchdowns at the slot position. 16.
Mm-hmm.
That led the nation in 2018, and that earned him a 7th round pick, I believe, in the draft. And he is currently on the practice squad for the Seahawks. So
Yep.
a great slot receiver in Hawaii in 2018. Not too long ago, it's 2 years ago. Okay. 16 touchdowns at that position. I'm under predicting that for Bell and saying 10, just based off of the shortened season and everything, because I think he's going to have games where he'll have multiple touchdowns. But again, back to bringing it back to the veteran receiving core on this team. With everybody headed out the door to the NFL or Oklahoma State or wherever they've all gone, it's going to come back to the veterans. It's going to come back
Mm-hmm.
to who's been here, who's been in the community, who's made plays out there on Martin, like who has made the most impact on this team at that receiving position throughout the course of their career.
Mm-hmm.
And Renard Bell has gotten better and better and better. And just like Ursaw started really small, but then had a booming season in the run and shoot offense. We have the running
Ryan,
back
right,
set.
I've got to cut you off real quick. We're actually entering we're running out of time here.
Okay.
So I'm really sorry about that. Great takes, but
All
tune
good.
in
Love you,
next
Renard
week.
Bell.
We're gonna have some more discussion. If you want to hear more about WSU football, come back here next week, same time. But you can find our written content exclusively at sportspac12.com. That's a new partnership we've got. Great opportunity. So go to their website and follow them on Twitter at SportsPac12. You can visit our website, dashboards.tv, for all of our shows and clips, along with links to that written content, and follow us at Dash Sports TV on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Dash Sports.